this is Norm Hitzges. Friday morning on our Sports Talk Show, our usual collection of Friday morning madness types, and your chance to talk to Cowboy defensive tackle John Dutton. Right now, another very special show with David Gold.
And thank you, Norm. This is David Gold, and we welcome you to 3 hours of what we are certain is going to be lively and informative conversation. This is a very special afternoon here at KLIF. Throughout the next 2 hours, we're going to be talking about the real seminal force behind this radio station, a man that is one of the legends of radio, Gordon McLendon. Throughout the next 2 hours, you are going to hear people and hear little bits and pieces of that radio station's operation. And this is going to be quite a sensation. This is going to be some show, and this is something that those of you who are natives to this area and grew up with KLIF, this is going to be something that you're not going to want to miss. This is going to bring back memories. Those of you who are new to the area and you want to understand the radio scene in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, this is going to be something you must listen to. And even if you didn't grow up listening to KLIF, you'll recognize a lot of the top 40 format and how it came about when we talk this afternoon. Let me tell you what the lineup's going to look like in the next 2 hours. In our first half hour, I've got Ken Knox with me. Ken is with me in the studio. We'll also be talking to Charlie Van Dyke, who's also a radio legend. He'll be with us in just a minute or so. And at 3:30, we'll be talking to Dan McCurdy, who is now with the Southland Corporation, but he was the second Charlie of Charlie and Harrigan. And Michael Spears, who is presently the program director for KKDA, and he joined KLIF as an SMU student back in 1966. And he was Hal Martin here at KLIF. At 4 o'clock, we've got Ron Chapman over from KVIL. He was Irving Harrigan, and he was part of that Charlie and Harrigan team, as you know. Ken Dow will be with us. He worked for Gordon McLendon from 63 to 75. And we've got cousin Linnie, who will be here now with KKDA with McLendon from 69 to 72. And Michael O'Shea, who is presently the group vice president for Cube Radio up in Seattle. And he worked here doing mornings and afternoons and was program director here just before KLIF was sold in 1973. But we do have with us right now Ken Knox, who's in a studio. He's now with KMEZ. He was with Gordon McLendon from June 1955 to January 1961. He moved to the coast and returned to work at KILT in Houston for 2 years, another McLendon station. And he's been with McLendon for a total of 13 years. And on our phones with us from Phoenix, Arizona, is Charlie Van Dyke, now with KFYI in Phoenix. He was with Gordon McLendon on KLIF from 1966 to 1968. And let me see. Ken, you're here in the studio. You can hear me fine. Charlie, can you hear me? Charlie Van Dyke in Phoenix. Can we be... Oh, okay, we don't have him yet. Okay, great. Let me say hello to Ken Knox. And Ken, indeed, a pleasure to have you with us.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine.
I'm hearing you on the phone.
Yeah, we only need this for the telephone, so it's okay.
Pleasure to be with you.
What does this mean to you? What was Gordon McLendon in your life?
Probably the greatest influence I've ever had career-wise. I've been in the business 40 years, and I was with him a little more than a fourth of that. I was with him. I'm from the class of 55, as you said earlier. I was with him when Top 40 was just getting started. Sad as the occasion is this week, of course, I've done a lot of reminiscing, as so many others have, looking back over the years. And I, too, have the old memos and memorabilia, one kind or another. And it's brought back memories. But what people may not realize today, we're talking about a radical departure from what radio was to what it became in the mid-1950s. And
it was something different. You know, we have a cut here that I think you'll enjoy. And I think a lot of the folks out there are going to find this fascinating, too. Our own Mark Watkins put some things together of Gordon McLendon's and a little history of Gordon, and this will be great, Ken. So let's roll that. This is Mark Watkins here at KLIF putting together a retrospective of the life and legend of Gordon McLendon.
Whether you called him the Old Scotchman or the Old Scotsman, Gordon McLendon was radio in this town in the 1950s and 60s, and it's no wonder. He came from Maverick stock. His mama and daddy lived across the river in Oklahoma. But Bart Sr. made sure Gordon was born on the Texas side, in Paris, then took him back to Idabel to raise him. At age 12, the nationwide essay contest McLendon won set the tone for the hammer-down politics embodied in his radio editorials later. As a young man, driving at night in Oklahoma, he used to roll up all the windows in his car and pretend he was calling baseball games. His bachelor's from Yale in Oriental History and Language became important, too, for while he was at Yale, he did local play-by-play of the college baseball games. And when the war came, he got drafted to the Pacific to interpret Japanese radio messages. Afterward, his daddy wanted him to be a lawyer, and he went to Harvard and tried, but couldn't get this radio business out of his mind. With half interest in KMET radio in Palestine, his first taste of ownership, he later bought KLIF. But with no network feeds of ball games, he decided to recreate them himself, with spotters in the ballparks and taped crowd noises back in the studio. And the result was legend radio listening, which earned McLendon many national awards, while he was founding the Liberty Broadcasting System and signing up over 400 affiliates. All this before Gordon McLendon was 30, and the fun was just beginning.
KLIF 1190 Scooby-Doo.
A fellow named C.E. Hooper, who ran a rating service in the 30s that was the dominant rating service at that time for networks and stations, listened to our radio station, KLIF, when we had first started the music and news format. And he said, well, Gordon, I listened to it, and he said, you're doing everything right, but one thing. You've got to do that. I thought I was doing it all right. I said, what's that? He said, you've got to promote. He said, you've got to have a lot of promotions on the air. And thus was born what I believe to be the modern top 40 format.
KLIF, it's a legend. Yes, indeed. Big D.
Television had left to radio really only two things that radio could do either as well or better than television. It seemed to me, at least, and that was music and news. For that reason, economics forced me to gravitate toward those two things. Well, I was flamboyant, but of necessity.
As you know, KLIF was the first station in America to present Beatlemania. 2 solid days of Beatle hits. KLIF was the station that brought you the official Beatle book from England. KLIF, the station that brought you exclusive KLIF Beatle interviews. KLIF, the station that played exclusive Beatle hits, weeks ahead of other Texas radio stations. KLIF would like to thank Beatle fans everywhere for their loyal support. Super Shows Incorporated presents The Beatles, September 18th in Dallas. And this is Cliff with Super Shows 24 hours a day.
Thank you very much, everybody, and good evening. We'd like to carry on in a minute with a song which was about our last but one record release over here in Texas. And this song is called Can't Buy Me Love. I can't buy me love. Can't buy me love. I'll buy you a diamond ring, my friend, if it makes you feel alright. I'll get you.
And that's a little retrospective there, put together by our own Mark Watkins, of pieces that we found around here. That must have been great. And we are talking about the late Gordon McLendon. We've got Ken Knox in the studio. And joining us from Phoenix, Arizona is legend himself, Charlie Van Dyke, now with KFYI Radio in Phoenix. He was with Gordon McLendon on KLIF from 66 to 68. And Charlie, indeed a pleasure, sir.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to join you.
You know, this is... It's kind of a mixed feeling that we bring this show to us, to our listeners. It is one, of course, of sadness over the passing of Gordon McLendon, but Gordon's work goes on in all our lives, I suspect.
Well, there's no question that when you talk about Gordon, you automatically include some phrases like creative genius and industry giant and visionary, and hearing the composite you just aired, yeah, it brings back a whole load of emotions. I always kind of hoped somewhere in the back of my mind he would do it again, but I don't know how many great ideas any one person is supposed to have.
Have you ever met Ken Knox? Have you guys ever met each other?
Hello, Charlie.
Hi, Ken. Good to talk to you again.
You're famous, whether I've met you or not. I've known you for how many years now?
For many. Well, I think one, you have to look at the thing several ways, I think. One is Gordon McLendon himself, and I think those of us who were privileged to work with him count that as a treasure of our careers. And then there's also what was created by really, I think, his atmosphere. He let people grow and blossom in areas. So I think your point, David, is valid, that his contribution does go on in the careers and in the contributions of hundreds of broadcasters who passed through his training school.
Charlie, let me do this. I've got a little break here. Pay attention, if you will, to the out cues and some of the production that we have coming back, because we've got old KLIF jingles you're probably familiar with. So let's do that. We'll take this break. We'll come right back with Charlie Van Dyke and Ken Knox. Very soon we'll be speaking to Dan McCurdy and Michael Spears here at Talk Radio 1190 KLIF.
KLIF 1190, where the action is. Remember this big KLIF classic. KLIF 1190.
324 here at KLIF. You know, it sounds so funny, this being KLIF and that being KLIF. We are back with you talking about this radio station and what it was years ago with the people who made it so, in a retrospective to the late Gordon McLendon, a man who was a seminal figure in the history of Top 40 radio. We're with Charlie Van Dyke, who is now at KFYI in Phoenix, and Ken Knox, who's here in the studio. Ken was with Gordon McLendon for a total of 13 years, and we're sitting here talking, Charlie, about those jingles. They must bring back some memories to you. How important was Gordon McLendon in the inception of those kinds of production pieces?
Well, I think his philosophy and his theory was a key in virtually everything we did. There is a memo that he wrote, and I don't have the exact date on it. It had to be pre-1965, that I have saved and used as a guide in a lot of radio activity ever since. I think he was able to crystallize in conceptual form a terrific amount of information that we are even today maybe relearning. And I think you have to go back and look at the number of brand new things that he did that are coming back again as new ideas. The early morning team show of what was then Murphy and Harrigan, or Tom Murphy and Ron Chapman under a different name. The current craze in Top 40 radio of doing these Zoo morning shows. He did all of that years and years ago. So he was first with an enormous number of things. You know, KLIF was the very first station in America to ever do mobile news units. But as was his way, you didn't just do that. You had to make it bigger than life. And Ken, you probably can recall, we had, at least during my time, never more than 2 mobile units, but they were always numbered 5 and 6.
Right.
So whatever it was always bigger than life.
He believed that, you heard him say promotion earlier, his slogan was, tell them you're going to do it, tell them you're doing it, and then come back and tell them you did it. And that was part of the fast-moving concept. If we had a winner of, $100, we would pound that home for a few days, you know. I had a man tell me, I really don't like your music. He was an older man. Didn't like the rock and roll. He says, I'm afraid not to listen. I might miss something.
Well, you can't beat that.
You know, also, Ken, if you remember, almost everything that went into KLIF was not money-oriented. It was never a high-intensive cash giveaway station. It was really what the station and its people and the people of Dallas-Fort Worth were doing that was the whole center.
I have a list of promotions that he put down on paper, about 25 items on a page that you can do to improve your radio station, and not one of them costs 1 cent to do.
Yeah, that's incredible. How much of musical follower was Gordon McLendon. How well did he know the music, or did he delegate authority on that score well? Charlie?
In my view, I don't think he particularly cared. If it was new and if it was a trend, as you remember, the basic concept was really what was similar to the old Lucky Strike hit parade. Whatever the 40 biggest songs were and the new up-and-comers, that's really what you had to deal with. I don't think any one individual song would have really mattered to him. What he was very keen on, and his crew of national program directors, who were also very talented, was what is the leading edge of a trend. And if it's the British invasion, or I remember one particular promotion when the Beach Boys were very big. It was the trend we were more concerned about, and so we gave away a red and white striped beach buggy that drove all over town for a month before we gave it away with a surfboard strapped on top. It was the linking of the station to the hottest trend that I think was more important.
On the subject of the music, Gordon's father, bless his heart, Mr. B.R. McLendon, kept an office in the studios, and he would complain somewhat about some of the songs. He'd say, "Son, do we have to play that one?" And meaning, of course, a little too raunchy for his tastes. And Gordon would very tactfully say, yes, Dad, we got to play that one. That's one of the important songs, and So I think Gordon's desire, his personal taste in music, wasn't of ultimate importance. If it needed to be played to reflect our mass public taste, then it got played. I don't care what it was.
David, there was, though, in later years, a major industry shake that Gordon caused, which was, at one point in time, he became very concerned with the lyric content of songs. Mm-hmm. And I think it was White Rabbit or something like that caught his attention. And he made a statement, or one of his henchmen made the statement that we weren't going to play any records that were not accompanied by a lyric sheet when they were presented to the station. And that was, in a grand manner, resisted by the record companies, except the combined power of the McLendon stations across the country was so big that most all finally gave in and did submit them.
That's great. And, Charlie, I know you've got to run, and for making you part of this show, we can't thank you enough, and for your taking the time out of your day, it's something real special. We appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate being included, and for those who are sharing a moment of time thinking about Gordon McLendon, I emotionally and spiritually share the same thoughts. It was certainly one of the high points of my time in the business.
Thanks, Charlie. We appreciate it. Charlie Van Dyke at KFYI in Phoenix, who worked with McLendon from 66 to 68. Thanks very much. We will be back here at our retrospective with Gordon McLendon. We've got people with you for the next 2 hours. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to join us at 469-1190, we'll be back.
You're living on KLIF 1190, where we never, where we never use our ration pigs.
Fly Jet America now through September 30th.
KLIF, it's a legend. Yes, indeed.
Okay, we are back with you, 3:33 here at Talk Radio 1190 KLIF, and it sounds funny coming back from those jingles into the talk format. We're here talking about the late Gordon McLendon and about we really got some interesting conversation for the next hour and a half. In the studio with me now is Ken Knox, who was with Gordon McLendon for 13 years. Also joining us now is Michael Spears. He's presently the program director for KKDA Radio. He joined KLIF as an SMU student on a part-time basis in February of 1966. He went full-time in March of 67 through July of 69 as Hal Martin. Michael, good to have you.
Hi, David. How are you? Good to see you.
Michael and I are old friends, so this is like an old homecoming here. Paxton Mills is with us on our phones. Paxton, hi, Paxton. How are you?
Oh, great.
You are at KIMN in Denver.
Yes, sir.
A station that I kind of grew up with a little bit. So, and a very interesting station because very similar to the same format that KLIF did here in the early days.
Right. Hi, Paxton. It's Michael.
How you doing? I haven't talked to you in years.
Yeah, Paxton was my neighbor, as a matter of fact. We grew up and almost went to school together. It was really fun.
Well, that's
ended up working together with Charlie.
That's the beauty of all this. This is like an old homecoming here, isn't it?
Really is. It's so strange hearing the old KLIF jingles. I think if you had asked me what I was going to do this afternoon, the last thing I could have told you was be on KLIF in Dallas.
Yeah, that would be really different. Well, you know, again, I ask everyone the same question, and I'll start with Michael and go to Paxton. What did Gordon McLendon need?
Showmanship. And so many innovations, of course, in the business. But bringing the real showmanship into the Dallas-Fort Worth area and really writing the rules, I guess, in our industry right out of Dallas, Texas. And I don't think anyone's ever been able to come back into this city and do radio and not be compared to the showman Gordon McLendon.
I agree entirely. I think one of the added things that needs to be pointed out was Gordon's farsightedness as far as people were concerned. In the case of Mike here, and in the case of Charlie, and so many people that came through Dallas ended up to literally be at the top of this industry, not only now, but, you know, for the last few decades. I think Mike would agree with that.
Well, you know, it's interesting because Charlie Van Dyke pointed out that he goes back looking at old Gordon McLendon memos in running his stations today. And I know Charlie's in Phoenix and running a station there, a talk station. But I guess it's there's a lot of similarity, regardless of format, in what you're doing, what you're trying to do, especially with the promotions, correct?
That's absolutely right. And if you think back, David, and I'm sure this has been talked about before, but there's so many different areas of breakthroughs the McLendons did in radio. I mean, news on the hour, every hour, we think about that as normal, but that wasn't normal. And mobile news reports, that's something Gordon McLendon began. Editorials on the radio, Gordon McLendon began that. That had never been done before. And the list goes on. This format actually began on this station late one night. I was on the air one night, and Gordon McLendon came in about 10 o'clock when I was doing weekends and said, we're going to do something a little different on the FM. At midnight, we're going to go into all talk. Paxton, do you remember that?
Yeah, I do indeed.
And the FFM KNUS, which is now KLUV here, went into an all talk presentation continuously for about 4 days. It didn't stop. And Gordon McLendon introduced talk radio, and then later brought in a talk host on KLIF, a music station. I mean, you can go on and on with the all-news formats, and he had an all-ads format in Los Angeles on a station called KADS, and it was all just want ads. So the list of innovations, radio jingles never were on radio until Gordon McLendon, and I think Bill Meeks worked to
well, you know, this is what I was going to...
these kinds of things together.
This is what I was going to ask you. Growing up in different parts of the country, there are a lot of people listening, and they want to know about their stations in their town and how they compare to KLIF and who was really starting this stuff. In other words, if you grew up in New York with WABC, or you grew up in Los Angeles with KHJ, or you grew up in Philly with WIBG, or whatever it may have been, these were great top 40 radio stations. How did McLendon fit in terms of the innovations that those stations put together? Ken?
I was just thinking on expanding. You know, you mentioned the talk format, the ads format, the rock format. In San Francisco, the whole industry, when he bought a station there, looked for him to come with another top 40 format. We played the raunchiest rock and roll record we could find. It happened to be the love theme from the Gila Monster, which was one of McLendon's movies.
That's right.
And we played it for 24 hours. And then the announcer on the air broke it on the air and went to beautiful music, saying we'll never play that kind of music again on cable, KABL. So there was an easy listening, beautiful music format.
The great innovations in the call letters, Ken, to the KABLs right. In San Francisco, the KLIFs in Dallas, which comes from Oak Cliff, where the station began, the Kilt in Houston, the Keel in Shreveport. I mean, we could go through the list of call letter innovations. Just
what was your question to me?
Well, I'm just wondering. Maybe Paxton now in Denver at a station that did it similarly to the way that KLIF did it years ago. How much of an innovator was the old KLIF as compared to some of those stations around the country, WLS in Chicago or whatever?
David, it was the innovator.
I agree entirely. And the guy that, pardon me, that started KIMN, 30 years ago, was a very close friend of Gordon's and was an emulator of Gordon's innovations out of Dallas.
You know, today, in business today, all kinds of business, not only broadcasting, people test things out. Well, we're going to run a test on this. We're going to run a survey. McLendon would just say, gather us together. What do you guys think about this idea? And we'd boot it around, and he'd say, okay, let's go with it. And we'd try it, there was no testing or focus groups. We just gave it a try, and most of the time it worked. Just worked as we expected.
We've got Dan McCurdy on the line, and Dan is now in public relations for the Southland Corporation, but he was the second Charlie of Charlie and Harrigan. He worked with Ron Chapman in 63 and 64, and he was with Gordon from 63 to 65. And Dan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Boy, this is like a forum. I could just sit back and let you guys go. This is absolutely fabulous.
It's like old hope week, isn't it?
Do you all know each other?
Sure.
You know Ken and Michael and Paxton in Denver?
Hi, Paxton. How you doing, sir? Good.
That's great. Let me ask you, so, we've been talking about the good times. Could McLendon really come down hard when he didn't like something?
Oh, boy.
He really could.
With great expressiveness.
Yes. I was program director in San Antonio one day in 57, and I called Gordon in Dallas to ask about a matter I had to make a decision on. We talked about it for a while, and he was very pleasant, very kind, advised me properly, and then chewed me out for not sending a memo. She said, this did not require a phone call. And, he could turn on you in a hurry.
Dan?
Yeah.
What's your favorite memory of him on the chopping block with your head?
Well, honestly, I never had him deal with me that way. It was always very cordial. Gordon was an interesting guy, and I think you'll probably find Ron, when he starts reminiscing later, to back me up on this. Gordon was one of those great managers of people. In a strange way, he was very much like President Reagan. I noticed here just a couple of weeks ago on the cover of Fortune magazine, they had a statement, sort of the management philosophy of President Reagan, and I thought when I read it that it applied very clearly to Gordon. It said he hired the very best people and he turned them loose, and he didn't interfere. And I think that's the thing that, at least as far as I was concerned during my time as Charlie with the Charlie and Harrigan show, I never felt any interference from Gordon at all. We'd see him every once in a while, and, he would call and we'd talk, but I never felt the chopping block feeling at all. The funny thing about Gordon, he was, I think, the most difficult sort of taskmaster in sort of a strange way, in that when you were on the air, you knew every moment that you were on the air that if Gordon were doing your show, he'd probably be doing it better than you were.
That's a good point.
I think we all had that feeling.
Yeah.
Let me do this. I got one of those breaks to take, and we got one of those jingles to lead us out. So let's listen to this one, and we'll come right back.
Big KLIF. KLIF. It's a legend. Yes, indeed. Big D. KLIF makes the week go fast, makes the weekend last and last. 1190.
Oh boy, that brings back. That brings back memories.
I remember playing all those.
Isn't that wild?
And they still sound really good.
We're with Ken Knox. We're with Michael Spears. We're with Dan McCurdy by phone. We're with Paxton Mills by phone. All alumni of the Gordon McLendon School of Broadcasting. How's that? I wonder what he would say about that. Was it a school of broadcasting? When you're in your day-to-day activities and you're going about your business now, and it's been years since you've been away, how much of an effect does he have on you? I mean, how many? Do you consciously think what Gordon would do at times?
Well, I certainly do. Maybe not that consciously, but everything I think and do that has to do with radio broadcasting somewhere has its roots in the philosophy of Gordon McLendon.
Sure.
I work with what's supposed to be called adult music, easy listening, beautiful music, easy 100, But we're playing a lot of the same songs that I played at KLIF in 1955.
Just slow down a little bit, huh?
Right.
Gentlemen, Paxton, how about you?
I had the dual pleasure of listening to KLIF at its height, and then actually starting there. I was major neophyte. Well, as a matter of fact, it was one of my first jobs, and it was really an honor. I probably was more in awe than a lot of people around there because, of course, all of that was new to me. So it truly did.
Well,
put the foundation down for me.
I'm sorry, well, that's an interesting point. Michael's the same way, weren't? I mean, you started there as a student at SMU.
Well, actually, I started in a small city in Corsicana, but when I came to Dallas and went to SMU, I was there for about 3.5 years. In fact, Paxton and Charlie Van Dyke and Ken Dow, who I understand is in our lobby here, will be here in a few minutes, we were all there at about the same time.
But what's interesting is that usually in this business, you've got to go from Corsicana to Waco, from Waco to Abilene, then to Dallas. He was willing to take a chance on a lot of young talent.
He liked hometown talent, I think, because they really knew the area, and it was important that you could reflect the community.
He was really one of the few to have farm teams like that. We always used to joke the front door was through Tyler.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, but that's great, and he was a great judge of talent. And what was it, do you think, that tipped him off when you walked into that room and you asked for a job? What was he looking for, do you think? Maybe Dan might want to try a shoulder at that one.
Well, I think he was looking for a particular kind of fire in somebody's eye. You know, somebody who was kind of hungry, wanted to get out there and entertain people and have some fun while they were doing it. I sort of came in through the back door from Abilene. I think that was the west end of the farm team or whatever. I came in like 63 and replaced Bill Ennis, God bless his soul, who went on to Houston and then passed away a while after that. And then I went to the midnight show, and you talk about giving somebody a chance. I was on the midnight show for a year when the original Charlie Brown, Jack Woods, left, and I believe he went to Indianapolis. At any rate, I was given a chance to audition, along with several others, for the part of Charlie Brown. And I got it. And it just, it blew me away. My greatest dream had come true. There I was on the morning show with Irving Harrigan, with Ron Chapman. And so it was just a special time. He did give people a chance.
Ken Dow is here. He says he remembers.
I remember you, Dan Patrick.
Hi, Kenny.
You was one of my favorites.
Oh, that's
remember
great.
when you used to come in there and do that thing in my ear?
That's Granny Emma. That isn't Ken
Granny
Dow.
Emma lives. I can't believe it.
Hello, Danny. How you doing, boy?
Kenny boy, I am just doing fine. I remember, it just jumped to my mind. I remember one afternoon.
Be careful. That's a strange place.
That's right. But it was on Easter, and you came to the station in the afternoon. You were just dying laughing. I said, "What's the problem?" And
you were a funny guy.
Well, but you told me, I said something on the air about having barbecued Easter Bunny and threw it to a record, and you said you nearly drove off the road.
That was funny.
Hey, Kenny,
I have them every year now. They're really quite good,
Is Emma still 88? That's what I want to know.
Actually, I have run off with Irvin Harrigan. We live together. I know that's in vogue now. We have a very nice palatial place. I keep him, People's wondered what happened to him.
For those of you tuning in, that's Ken Dow. He worked for Gordon from 63 to 75. He left during that time for 2 years, then came back from 69 to 75. He worked the afternoon shift at first. Who's at first? And then when Ron Chapman left, he did the morning shift as Ken Dow and Granny Emma. That's the word this year.
Cheap labor, David.
Cheap labor.
2 for 1. Remember, Gordon, what he said? Save a little money.
Listen, we got one of those jingles, and we're going to take a break and come right back. Well, we got a slew of folks here talking about the late Gordon McLendon. We're having a great time here at KLIF.
Get the happy difference. La 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 la. Get the happy difference. La 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 la. The legend that beyond compare. KLIF 1190. The station with the happy difference.
Are you tired of the hassles and pressures of auto buying in the city?
KLIF 1190, where the action is.
Boy, I love that stuff.
Just want to hit a record right after I hear those,
Elvis Presley.
Do you guys agree with me? And I know that, of course, Paxton up there in Denver and those of us here in the studio, and, wouldn't it be great to hear radio like that again? Why doesn't it work the same way today? I mean, don't you think that that kind of sound would play today?
Michael spends $20 billion a year in research. Tell us why it won't work, Michael. Hi, Paxton. I didn't even say howdy to my old friend.
How you doing, Kenny?
I'm doing fine.
I don't know. If I can interject anything here, I just thought it was his collection of talent. I have never seen radio stations staffed like that since. Absolutely.
I think that radio still does work to some extent. It's modernized, it's changed, but the really successful stations, David, that you hear across the country nowadays, whether it's talk, a McLendon format, or news, a McLendon format, or some form of a music radio station, I think they do a lot of promotion. They have high visibility personalities.
But doesn't they have that top 40 thing that used to be there in the 50s and 60s? You know what I'm talking about?
Let me describe this mobile news unit system that I've never heard anything else like it to this day. We would break in the middle of a record with a mobile news unit. You guys remember that? Sure. We had a little intro that would go, first news first. Now, you'd hear this right in the middle of the song.
With a siren after.
Yes. And then the guy would...
Unless Vaughn would chase a tornado.
That's right. One day we broke in, and the news story was one of our newsmen had discovered an illegally operated nudist colony just outside Dallas. The song that was interrupted, Art Nelson was playing. It was Rawhide.
Well, their news people were spectacular. I remember when Bruce Hughes went out and talked to that hijacker at Love Field, and actually having a newsman. This was over at, I think it was at K-News, wasn't it, Mike? Or was it at KLIF? I don't recall.
I remember one where the late Joe Long had someone confess to a murder over the air.
Well, you know what we've got? We've got Gordon McLendon on record. We've got Gordon McLendon on the day of the assassination. I know that that Dan was kind enough to. We don't have it up. I thought we had it. We don't have the time to do it now. Okay, we'll do it in the next hour because we've got Gordon McLendon on that day of the assassination.
Well, Ron McAllister, I believe, followed the entire motorcade all the way out.
Sure. I was downtown that day. I remember we were in high school then, but of course KLIF at that point. And they used to have a policy in music radio. They would go all news. If there was a big event or weather, they would drop all the records.
That's right. In commercials, I've had them stick their head in the door, and there's a plane circling over Love Field, can't get the wheels down. Gordon would say, suspend all programming, all records, everything. And we would ad-lib. This would be, now we go to Mobile 3 and less long.
You guys remember the famous election coverages?
Yeah, we needed a bell, didn't we, Pax? Ding, ding.
We lost
Gordon
the bell.
McLendon, ding, 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 ding.
I remember one year, Kenny, down there with you, we lost the bell. I have never been so frightened, I think, in my life.
That was one of McLendon's demands as part of the format. You had to have this bell that alerted people's attention to, little sound effects, animate things. And it was like a hotel bell, just ding, ding. That would be, he'd pound that every time an updated return would come through.
That was one of his gimmicks. This sort of digresses only for a second, but I think it's interesting because Gordon was, we're all lauding Gordon today. I think Gordon would have gotten a big kick out of this to say, listen, tell him more about me. Tell him more about me. This is wonderful. He was a great promoter, and I loved him, and I was in awe of him. I'm still his fan. I always will be. But I'll tell you this. Gordon was an individual who had his mind made up. He was extremely dogmatic. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. If he wanted his bell there at the election, you better have his bell. I remember one of the classic illustrations of that. I was on the air one afternoon, and he had taken a phone call that I set up. No, I'm sorry, we had taken a phone call. That's what it was. Gordon was in Europe. Must have been in Switzerland or something, phoning back one of his editorials. Recall when he used to do things like that?
4-minute editorials.
Yeah, that's right. But he calls back this editorial, and we have a new announcer on, and the announcer is taking the telephone call, and somehow he forgot to press the record button. Uh-oh. And he said, excuse me. And Gordon could be extremely sarcastic and devastating and intimidation. And this fellow barely got out that he had not recorded the editorial, which was about half of the 4 minutes, Michael. And he said, could you do it for me one more time, Mr. McLendon? And Gordon said very succinctly, I will do it for you exactly one more time. Ever hear that, Pax?
I'm sitting here cringing, guys.
We got about 30 seconds in the hour, and I'm going to use that time to thank Dan and to thank Paxton on the phones for being with us and sharing us your time. It has been indeed a pleasure, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we are. We're really having a good time this afternoon.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Paxton, for joining us.
When it gets too hot down there, come on up and ski,
Yeah, I know the feeling. Thanks very much, gentlemen. We're going to come back with more of our retrospective look at Gordon McLendon and the early days of KLIF. We've got some more surprise hosts and guests with us, so stay with us.
Good afternoon. This is Ed Bush. David Gold is next. He can't hear what I'm saying. I just want to tell all you lefties. Cesar Chavez will be on my show this Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock here at KLIF. Now, here's David. Shh, don't tell him.
I can hear what you said, Ed. I can hear all the goo-goos. Yeah. All the goo-goos listening to our friend Ed Bush. Anyway, we are back with you at 4:08 here at Talk Radio 1190 KLIF. And we are, if you're just tuning in, this is really a switcheroo for you guys out there, but this is a lot of fun. For those of you who grew up in this area, this has got to be all kinds of reminiscing. And for those of you who are new to the area, we're talking about the history of Top 40 radio, in essence. We're talking about Gordon McLendon, who passed away, as you know, on Sunday. And Gordon was the real founder of this radio station. We're talking about his influence on radio. We've got people here who are alumni of the Gordon McLendon School of Broadcasting, better known as KLIF, where we now sit. With me right now in the studio is Ken Knox. He's now with KMEZ. He was with Gordon McLendon from June 1955 to January 61. He moved to the coast and returned to work at KILT in Houston for 2 years. That's another McLendon station. And he was with McLendon for a total of 13 years. Also with me is Michael Spears. He's presently the program director for KKDA, and he joined KLIF as an SMU student on a part-time basis in February of 66. Went full-time in March of 67 through July of 69 as Hal Martin. Ron Chapman is with me. He's presently with KVIL-FM, as many of you out there know, and was with Gordon McLendon from 59 to 65. His name was Irving Harrigan. That's good. We got to talk about the origin of that name, too. He got together with Tom Murphy to form Murphy and Harrigan, then worked with Jack Woods, who was on the air in the afternoon, as Charlie Brown to form Charlie and Harrigan. And also with me in the studio is Ken Dow, who worked for Gordon from 63 to 75. He left during that time for 2 years and came back from 69 to 75. He worked the afternoon shift at first. Then when Ron Chapman left, did the morning shift as Ken Dow and Granny Emma. That's pretty good stuff. And I understand that on the line with us from Seattle is Michael O'Shea. And Michael O'Shea is presently the Group Vice President and General Manager for KUBE Radio in Seattle, Washington. He was hired in 67 by Ken Dow. You're not going to hold that against him, right, Michael?
Oh, Michael's one of my favorite people. You can see why. Look where he is now.
Look where he is now.
Beautiful city, Vice President.
He's not tanning, he's rusty.
How's your tennis game, Michael?
Well, I'm still hitting the golf ball in the middle of the fairway, Ken.
How you do that? Oh, you're Vice President. I forgot. That's how you do that.
Yeah,
he plays more golf.
It's mandatory to play at least twice a week as a VP.
All right. Okay.
Well, Michael, thank you for joining us from Seattle. And as I said, Ron Chapman is here. Irving Harrigan. I mean, where was the inception of that from?
That came out of, by the way, I want to say that I've been listening to your first hour. It's very impressive. There are more big pipes in this building than down at Gifford Hill. It's just amazing the sounds that are coming out of this broadcast building today. The Irving Harrigan thing came from Mad Magazine, in fact, and I was just talking with the man who created it with Gordon just earlier today. And it was in a suite in the Brown Hotel in Louisville, Kentucky. And Gordon McLendon and Don Keyes were rustling through some pages of Mad Magazine at 2 o'clock in the morning. And Mad had a make-believe commercial. It was a make-believe ad, as all their things were put-ons. And it featured a man named Irving Harrigan. And that immediately caught their fancy because it sounded Jewish and Irish in the same person. And they thought that was ridiculous. And in the middle of the Bible Belt of Dallas-Fort Worth, they thought, why don't we name a DJ Irving Harrigan? Now, the way it really, truly, honestly happened to me, Ken, you can verify this because Jack Sharp was the program director who broke the news to me. Ken Knox was at the station at the time, too. I drove in from New Haven, Connecticut, and hit the Oklahoma border, Texas border, started picking up KLIF 1190. And as I came in, they were running political advertisements. Now, this was November 23rd or something, so all elections were already over, okay? No, election day is what, November 2nd or something? Anyway, there were no elections going on that I knew of, but maybe there were in Texas, and they kept saying things like, vote for Irving Harrigan. His record is beyond reproach. Vote for Irving Harrigan. And they didn't say paid political announcement. They didn't say anything. They just said those things, and they kept doing it twice an hour. And I thought, this is weird. There are different laws in Texas. And I got to the station. I walked in. My real first name is Ralph. And I walked in and I said, reporting for duty, sir, kind of. I said, hi, I'm Ralph Chapman. And he said, hi, you're Irving Harrigan. And that's the first time. I'll tell you another story, Ken, that you will remember. And this is another bit of truth, and there's some local trivia in it. I didn't like the name Irving Harrigan. I hated it. I wanted to use my own name. I had great family pride. They said, these are the jokes, folks. This is the way it's going to go. I went one evening to a place called the Chalet Supper Club, and I believe you were there that night, Ken.
Right.
I'll never forget this night, and I do believe you were there. I remember you getting introduced. It is now the Dixie Lakewood in Dallas at the corner of Gaston and Abrams. The building is still there, still the same basic building. And a lot of people were there for a big press party, and they introduced all of the people from KLIF. And they introduced Ken Knox, and everyone went, yay. Introduced Art Nelson, yay. And they introduced Irving Harrigan. Now, keep in mind, I had not been on the air yet. I'd only been here 3 days. I had not been on the air yet. And they introduced Irving Harrigan, and the place went crazy. And I hadn't said a word yet. And I said, I'll take it. Right? That'll be my name. That will be my name. So that's how that came about.
That's great stuff. You know, when you worked together, when all of you crossed paths or whatever, did you realize that you were part of something that was going to go down in the annals of modern radio history, broadcasting history, whatever it may be? Did you realize that you were real trendsetting at that time?
Let me tell you something about that. I knew about this place. I was working just out of college in a little station in Mobile, Alabama. And there was a fellow there named Jim Tabor who later worked for KLIF, then later went on to own his own radio station. And Jim told me these amazing stories about this KLIF in Dallas. And you got to remember that I had never been west of the Mississippi River. I grew up in a little town in Mississippi. So I drove through Dallas, Texas, on my way to California. I was about 21 years old to go to work out there at a radio station. Passing through country I had never seen before. I saw the Dallas skyline and the lights. I could not believe it, the aura of this great city. And I turned on the radio to 1190. And I heard a guy called Russ Knight, the Weird Beard, and he was playing the Bristol Stomp. And I said to myself, boy, my heart rate went up, I don't know what, it was 150. My blood pressure went sky high, and I said, one of these days, I'm going to work at that radio station. As a matter of fact, Ron Chapman is the reason I got the job at that radio station, because when I did come back to Dallas about 9 months later it was, I had to take second best, because only the best worked for KLIF. So I went over to K-Box, and Ron befriended me, and Jack Woods, who was later with him on the air, and these two guys spoke up in my behalf later on, and that's how I got back to KLIF.
Let me do this. Let me take one of those breaks. We're going to come right back. We're going to get one of those jingles on before we go into the spot set. So, Michael, you'll probably get a kick out of these. We've been running them all afternoon. Listen carefully, okay?
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Charlie and Harrigan each morning. KLIF makes the week go fast, makes the weekend last and last. 1190.
KLIF presents the world's greatest disc jockey, Ross Knight.
Isn't that awful?
All right, baby, this is Russ Knight, the Weird Beard, the savior of Dallas radio. Let me save you with music till midnight. Oh, I tell you, somebody's got to come up here before midnight, honey. One of those Dallas good-looking girls and pull my Weird Beard tambourine. We got Billy, Roy, Dale, Trigger, the Dallas Salvation Army. From 1190 at the harmonic tone. Little music for Big D. A lot of Weird Beard dances going around the Black Bottom. You got a brand new dance from Joey D and the Peppermint Twist. It goes like this. You got it.
Oh my. Well, you caught me by surprise there. You know how I get caught up in the music. Forget it. Anyway, boy, this is really wild. This is really fun.
You know, and listening to that, it probably would work, you know, if you brought all that back.
Oh, you know.
You may have some requests to do that.
Yeah, listen, I'm worried.
Don't count on it.
Tomorrow we might come back. We're playing that record, you know. I see them bringing the turntables, and you guys have really become an influence around here. Anyway, this is David Gold. Believe it or not, I'm still here. And we are with, you know who's just joined us? Cousin Lennie, who is now with KKDA Radio. He was with McLendon from 69 to 72 when the station changed ownership. So we've got Michael O'Shea on the phone from Seattle. We've got Cousin Lennie in the studio. We've got Ron Chapman in the studio. We've got Ken Dow in the studio. We've got Michael Spears in the studio. And we've got Ken Knox in the studio. So what we're going to have to do is identify ourselves before we say anything so everybody out there knows who's speaking, because there are a slew of folks here. We are really overwhelmed. Cousin Lennie, good to have you.
It is my pleasure. Honor to be here. Really, a super honor.
This is something, isn't
I have
it?
a microphone. Am I on? Yeah, never been on. I'm on now, thank you.
There you go.
It's super honor to be here. And ironic enough, today, the two people most responsible for me being with Gordon McLendon are in the studio, being the person of Ron Chapman and Ken Dow.
Well, you were listening to this on the way over. This must be a wild experience to hear this kind of reminiscence for somebody like yourself. But what did McLendon mean to you?
One of the most talented men I've ever known in my life. Just a true talent, a real heavy person, a person that knew radio inside out. And his ideas, his plans, he would say, try it, and it would work, and that type of thing. But moreover, I would like to say that coming over, I was listening to, I believe it was Paxton Mills was saying, talking about the Bruce Hughes in the KLIF News being the gentleman that went out and gave himself up. He said, okay, I'll be the hostage if we can get away. Now, that happened on KLIF. I was on the air. The gentleman was listening to the Cousin Linnie show on Big Cliff, and he wanted me to talk to the police. So what I did was got right on the two-way, called Bruce Hughes. Bruce Hughes was always out there, and he was ready to go to the story.
Guy lived in the streets, huh?
Well, mostly.
That's very close.
So Bruce immediately got involved, and it was a dynamic all the way until the morning. Michael O'Shea was doing morning drives, and Mike was on the phone a few minutes ago. Is he still here?
Yeah, he's here.
Good. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Cuz.
What's going on, my man?
Well, we're just having sunshine in Seattle.
Sunshine and blue skies. Sound like the old Cliff lyrics. Anyway, what was going on? Mike came in that morning, and they continued this fiasco until it was ended, and without any injuries or anything like that. And that's one of my most memorable times on the air, because everything stopped. All programming stopped, as was mentioned earlier on. When something like that was happening, everything stopped. Go to Cliff News, and that's what it was.
You know, most of the people in the early days were Texans, weren't they? Now, Ken, you and Ron came from out of state, though. And how was Gordon about that? How did he feel that he should hire? You know, radio now is a very mobile industry. People move around the country as soon as they move across town. Was Gordon more likely to hire in-town people, or is he likely to bring people in from out of state? How did he deal with that?
I don't think there's any difference, was it?
Now, you wanted the truth about that. You wanted the honest answer.
Go ahead,
David. The honest answer was he always had a big star. That was Ron. And when he was Irving Harrigan, and first it was Murphy and Harrigan, then Charlie and Harrigan, and he put the star in the morning show, and then he built the rest of the radio station basically around that. That's my opinion. Do you agree with that, Michael, Ron?
I don't know that I agree with that totally.
Yeah.
I think that the secret that he started doing was to put key people in every single slot there is.
Everybody had to be good, given that you had to be able to carry your weight on the air. But the star, from the time that I knew that he was really actively involved in that, was on the morning show, and it came from there. Everybody else had to perform adequately, but he really did a lot of promotion. He was the guy who brought promotion into the business.
But that doesn't answer the question. The question was regional. Was there any favoritism? I don't think there was, because there were people from.
I never saw any.
No,
I don't think
so. But they would. A lot of people were attracted to work for KLIF, so they would attract the top talent from all over the country, and then the younger people on the staff would emulate those that were, the senior people. And so
let me turn to Michael O'Shea in Seattle. You're an executive now. How much influence does McLendon have in your day-to-day activities?
You know, when I worked for KLIF, I started in 1967, and I came from Toledo, Ohio, about as far away from Dallas, Texas, almost as you could be. And as a matter of fact, I used to be. A lot of people thought it was good to have a Yankee jock on the staff, I remember in those days, and that was me. But in those days, none of us made any money. We didn't. There was the smallest paychecks in the world there. But, our pay has come in the years subsequent to that. I have to say that I've just had a marvelous career in this business, and I've worked in great cities like Miami and Los Angeles and Seattle and just all over the country, and really good operations and good for good people. And I cannot tell you how big an important part the McLendon experience back in the 60s and the 70s. I was Gordon McLendon's last program director when he sold the station in 1972, and I was doing the morning show then. And that was money in the bank. I think the top salary I ever made at that radio station was $18,000 a year. But, it's paid off on a multiple of 100 times that since then. And it's just been through being around that kind of an environment. I didn't know Gordon McLendon very well. I worked there for almost 7 years, which in those days was almost a record for a KLIF jock because there was a lot of people going up and moving into bigger markets, and I stayed there for 7 years. But in those 7 years, the education that was made available just by osmosis. I probably shook hands with Gordon McLendon 3 times in 7 years, and in those 7 years working around the people like Ken Dow, who was probably one of the biggest influences in my career, and working in an environment that Ron Chapman had touched, and that the other names that are coming out here, Charlie Van Dyke and Michael Spears was so instrumental in those early days, and just working in an environment around the McLendon-esque has created such an impactful position for me to take beyond there. Some of the rules and some of the lessons that we learned, and how to promote radio, and how to just listen as Gordon used to listen. He used to listen as a listener. He didn't listen as a disc jockey. He would listen as a listener, and some of those lessons have just been so invaluable throughout the years.
That's that's what we hear all day long: promotion. It's something that I guess he really had a feel for that other stations just picked up on later on. I know that around the country now, you'll hear a lot of radio stations borrowing from other radio stations. It's kind of one person will put their foot in the water, get it foot wet, and then the rest of the stations see if they come out with their foot alive, and then they'll go out and do it themselves. And I guess McLendon was really the guy that put his foot in the water an awful lot.
It's called research.
Well, yeah, although his was on-the-air research,
That's
wasn't
right.
it? But he had a sign in front of the station for a lot of years that said America's most imitated radio station, and it was. There's no question about it.
No doubt.
And it's interesting because, if you look at the country, you wouldn't think that Dallas, Texas would be the innovation spot for top 40 radio, and in fact it was.
Gordon McLendon was the total product. Gordon McLendon made top 40 radio here in Dallas.
And you can't really, talk about it very much, David, without going back to the fabulous promotions and surrounding the station with the stars. You always would have the stars on the station, or the unexpected things happen on the station. Even commercials that were gimmick or gag commercials, bogus commercials were on the air as an entertainment value.
You ever do a thing on April Fool's Day? I remember.
Sure. We switched staffs with the Houston station, I think, one year, KILT. I didn't tell anybody. We claimed we were somebody else, and people were calling up. We could spend another hour just talking about the promotions.
I would imagine. Stations. Let me take this break. We've decided to take it all the way up to 6 o'clock, and if that be okay with anybody here, or as many of you would want to stay, can stay.
For $18,000 a year, I'd be glad to stay.
Order a pizza.
Because you know what I want to do? I want to open it up to listeners whose memories out there would be interesting for, I think, all of us to hear what they finger on and single out as being their memory banks. So if you want to join us and you want to join our conversation, we're at 469-1190, 469-1190, and we are going to go to phone calls. And we've got a slew of folks that are graduates of the McLendon School of Broadcasting here at KLIF. So come and join us, 469-1190 on the David Gold Show. We'll be right back.
Big Cliff!